What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Week 4 trade targets. You guys know the drill. This is my favorite part of fantasy because we can oftentimes capitalize on trading for players that are underperforming for the volume they've been receiving. However, you guys have made it known that maybe your league mates don't appreciate the fun of trading as much as we do, so trades don't get done as often. Because of that, I'll be cutting down to one trade video a week, and instead, I'll be doing a flex video on Thursday. So put your start-sit questions in the comment section of today's video, of Wednesday's video, and I'll go over those on Thursday. Tomorrow is still going to be that same video where I go team by team and talk about each of the running backs, but then on Thursday, I'll go over all the different questions you guys put in the comment section about start sit, and they can be different positions. So it doesn't have to be 2 running backs or 2 wide receivers. It's a flex video, so it can be a running back versus a wide receiver. Also, put your scoring, or else I'm just going to assume that all of these are half PPR leagues. So, with all that being said, let's start things off at wide receiver with Courtland Sutton. Sutton isn't a flashy name, and his quarterback is dust at this point in his career, but the volume is there, and it's entirely possible that he explodes soon. He's known more as a deep threat, but he's still averaging a little under 8 targets per week, and he has at least 80 air yards in each of the first 3 weeks. So the volume is there to post consistent yardage, plus these are deep targets, so they come with really big upside. But the biggest reason he's a trade target is his red zone role as well. He's 6th in the NFL in red zone targets and 2nd in receptions, catching 5 of his 6 red zone targets. He's just been unlucky in that he hasn't scored yet. Last week, Sutton accounted for 66% of the Broncos' air yards, including the 3rd highest weighted opportunity rating on the week. You want targets, but it's especially valuable when those targets are coming deep down the field or in the red zone. Well, Sutton is getting both of these, and he hasn't posted a spiked week yet just because he hasn't gotten into the end zone. So you can definitely get him cheaper than you should be able to. How about a fun fact for you guys on our next wide receiver? Among all players with at least a 0.68 opportunity rating, which is very high, only one has fewer than 46 fantasy points. His name is Jameson Crowder, and he only has 36. Crowder has a 30% target market share and 34% of the team's air yards. And that one's important because I think a lot of people view Crowder as a guy who runs all of his routes really close to the line of scrimmage and doesn't have all that much upside. But that's incorrect. He has 34% of the team's air yards. That's a really big number. And I know what else you're thinking. You're saying, Nick, isn't that all because of week 1? No, it's not. Actually, in week 1, he only had 23% of the Jets' air yards. So he's actually been improving on that number in weeks 2 and 3. Crowder is an every down wide receiver, but he's been unlucky in not scoring a touchdown even with 20 receptions. Especially after 2 down weeks and now his bye in week 4, I bet you can get Crowder really, really cheap, and that would be a great trade because Darnold is a massive upgrade over Luke Falk, and he's expected back after their bye. The next wide receiver is Christian Kirk, and he's currently tied for 4th in the league in targets through 3 weeks, averaging just under 11 per game. That's a crazy number. In fact, there are only 26 players with at least 25 targets through 3 weeks, but only 6 of them have failed to score a touchdown. Allen Robinson, Jameson Crowder, Darren Waller, Zach Ertz, Tyler Boyd, and Christian Kirk. Follow the air yards, follow the targets, follow the touchdowns whenever you want to pull off a trade in fantasy football. Air yards and targets are sticky from week to week. They indicate a player's involvement in the offense, and a player's share of them likely won't change all that much from week to week. What will change is the play volume, the pass and run split, which is heavily influenced by game script, and touchdowns. Touchdowns are the most random part of football. Mike Evans has at most missed 1 game in a season, and he's always been a red zone threat. Yet his touchdown counts on the year have been 12, 3, 12, 5, and 8. Then he scored 3 just last week, which was the same he had in all of 2015. That's crazy. He had the same number of touchdowns last week as he did in all of 2015. So all of the players I just listed, Robinson, Crowder, Waller, Ertz, Boyd, Kirk, all of them are seeing a large share of their team's pass volume, but have just been unlucky in the scoring department. Kirk is currently the wide receiver 33, but if he had 2 touchdowns, then he'd be the wide receiver 13 right ahead of Michael Thomas. And if you're wondering, all of the players I just mentioned have shown up on the BiLo model this season, with 3 of them being on there this week. Unfortunately, there are no running backs in the BiLo model this week. Dalvin Cook is technically there, which indicates that he should actually be doing better through the air than he is, which is kind of scary. I will be working on creating a running back model soon, but it's not easy. It takes a bit of time. But even though the current model is built to detect wide receivers to buy low on, running backs can still make the list. Last week, the model's top player to buy low on was Phillip Lindsay, likely because he had just too many touches through 2 weeks to not have a touchdown, which is exactly what I just went over. But again, it's built to detect underperformances in the receiving game, so it's less likely that a running back will make the list. But of course, it's not impossible, as we just saw with Lindsay. So, at running back, we're going to have to find some players on our own, but we can use the same logic as wide receivers. Find elite snaps, elite volume, but players that are just getting unlucky with touchdowns. Because if a player is out there on every snap and they're being used a ton, then they're going to score at some point, and no player follows that logic better than Leonard Fournette, who I still think is overrated and who the Jaguars would be better off without. But he became just the 3rd running back all season to play on 100% of the snaps. 100%! He joins Christian McCaffrey and Le'Veon Bell as the only players who have done this. He's averaging 19 touches per game and is out there every single play. It's just unlucky that through 3 weeks, the Jaguars have 6 passing touchdowns and no rushing touchdowns, because there's no way he'll ever get vultured at the goal line. I would honestly say that it's likely Fournette finishes the season with double-digit touchdowns, but especially after his Thursday night performance, you can get him for much less than he's worth. I mean, honestly, even guys like Dalvin Cook, who's been dominating this season, I mean, he's only played on 68, 72, and 62% of snaps, not 100%. No one even has the chance of taking work away from him, and he's within 3 targets of any other running back in the receiving game. He just hasn't scored yet, so trade for him before he does. Another running back that's getting unlucky with touchdowns is Royce Freeman. Now, Freeman has been in on 47, 52, and 49% of the Broncos' offensive snaps. He has the same number of carries as David Johnson and 2 more than James Conner. Plus, he's actually been involved in the receiving game this year with more targets than Devontae Freeman, Chris Carson, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, and even Zeke, who, side note, only has 7 targets through 3 games, which is mildly concerning. But back to Freeman, the volume is there, and although it's not a good team, they currently rank 4th in plays per game, but 30th in points per game. The thing is, they've played against the Bears and then in Lambeau against the Packers, which are 2 really tough matchups, so it's not exactly shocking that they haven't scored a lot yet. They play Jacksonville this week, which definitely is not ideal, but at least it's at home, and they are currently favored, and Jacksonville actually has been around league average against the run this season. So Freeman is someone I'd go after, because I'd be surprised if the owner asks a whole lot for him. And now that they're finally using him in the receiving game, he's seeing almost no snaps with 8+ defenders in the box, despite seeing the 2nd most of any running back last year. Crazy what happens when a team finally decides to be intelligent. The last running back we'll talk about today is James Conner, and a lot of people had concerns about Conner entering the season, mostly due to his snap count, not his actual talent. Then we saw in week 1, he played on only 46% of the snaps, then Big Ben gets hurt in week 2, and then this past week, he only gained 57 yards and fumbled. So that's the bad. The good news is that he's still pretty heavily involved. He has 11 receptions on the season, which puts him on pace for 59, or 4 more than he had all of last year. And he still saw 5 targets last week, even with Rudolph at quarterback. So those targets should continue. He has touch counts of 14, 14, and 17 on the year, which isn't elite. But realistically, Jalen Samuels played 26% of snaps last week, and he didn't even have a touch, while Benny Snell only saw 3 total snaps. So Connor is the clear lead back, and he also has 6 red zone touches through 3 weeks. No other player on the Steelers has more than 3. So we have a running back getting virtually all of the running back touches, is their most involved player in the offense when they get close to the goal line, who just finished as the running back 6 through 13 weeks, but is currently ranked behind Peyton Barber as the running back 30. He's going to go off soon, and it might very well happen this week at home against the Bengals. At tight end, it's really tough to buy low on a player since there are only so many options that are actually involved in their team's offense. The 2 top options this week are Ertz and Kittle, who rank 9th and 13th respectively. Ertz ranks 8th among all players in targets with 30 and has a very respectable 20.5% of his team's air yards, but what do you know? Hasn't scored a touchdown yet, so he's barely ranked inside the top 10. The same is true for Kittle. He played 100% of the snaps last week, is tied for 5th among tight ends with 17 receptions, and is actually tied for 1st in the league with 7 red zone targets, catching 5 of them. But he's the tight end 13 right now because he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. In fact, Waller, Ertz, and Kittle are the only tight ends in the top 22 that haven't scored yet. And one of them actually ranks 1st in this week's BiLo results. At quarterback, I don't even want to give you any names. You shouldn't be doing trades for quarterbacks because you'll very likely be giving up more than they're worth. If you do end up doing a trade, then just make sure you're the one trading away a quarterback because there are always options on free agency. And realistically, the difference between the quarterback 15 and the quarterback 6 or 7 is almost nothing. So those are the top trade targets for week 4. Remember, I can't go over every name in the BiLo model. So if you want to see the complete list, then you can do so at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. And also remember that I'm answering flex questions on Thursday. So make sure you write your questions in the comment section of either today or tomorrow's video, and I'll try and answer as many of them as I can. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? If you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? But thanks for watching.